This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights, where we bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. Today, we welcome disability rights activist, author, public speaker, and workshop facilitator, Mary Fashik. She's here to discuss her evolving advocacy in the online space, the harms of online harassment and bullying, and how the community can provide a platform for constructive conversations. Mary is a transnational, transracial adoptee who was born in Lebanon. She is the founder of Disability Justice Movement, Upgrade Accessibility. She is also a Susan M. Daniels Disability Mentoring Hall of Fame inductee and award-winning podcaster. Mary's activism is centered around the disability justice principle and intersectionality. She strives to use her platform to uplift the voices of most marginalized in the disability and chronically ill community. Mary, welcome back, and thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be back. Thank you for having me.
And as you know, before we start, we will provide our self-descriptions. Mary, why don't you go first?
Absolutely. I am a North African, West Asian, Lebanese-born woman with light brown skin. I have curly hair and I'm wearing a fall-inspired top with different colored leaves on it. I'm also wearing glasses and have black headphones on.
Thank you, Mary. And I am a white 50-year-old woman with brown wavy hair. I have a pink shirt on today and some dangly earrings that have brown flowers on them. And I use the pronouns she and her. Mary, every time we talk, and as I was giving your bio in the beginning, I always I'm not just amazed, I am so impressed and grateful to be able to have a conversation with you. The work that you do is incredible. So I want the audience who have maybe not heard you speak before on our podcast to learn a little bit more about you and the work that you do.
You know, I was thinking about that when you all asked me, like, well, describe the work you do. I'm like, well, you know, the work I do changes, right? It changes depending on the space I'm in. Sometimes I'm in a space with a organization, a nonprofit, where I'm giving workshops and I'm teaching about disability justice, disability history, and I'm a teacher, I'm a facilitator, and I'm educating individuals and companies and spaces that aren't familiar with these topics. But then other times, I'm a storyteller. I help to tell stories of the most marginalized in the disabled community through my podcast. Other times, I'm an organizer. I organize a accessible pride event every year called Pride Our Way. And other times, I do online advocacy, which is real, authentic advocacy. A lot of times, online advocacy gets criticized as not being real advocacy, but it is real, true, and authentic. So I do a lot of different work. My work cannot and should not be compartmentalized.
I really appreciate you saying that. And as soon as you started responding, I was thinking about the challenges that advocates in and of themselves have. And when you're talking about the change in not just the spaces that you work in, but also the daily, weekly, monthly, annual changes that happen culturally, right? So we are faced with new experiences and new pieces of adversity, unfortunately, often. as well as a lot of wins. So there is good along with that when talking about the advocacy that, especially the work that you're doing. And when we talk about disability rights and disability justice, intersectionality, equity, multi-marginalized members of communities, these are words that we are very familiar with, right? Like we talk about them all the time. We have this as part of our conversation. And we have discussed before, and I think it is important to continue discussing the differences between a lot of these terms, specifically disability rights and disability justice, and how those two things, while are in the same area of work, they are not the same. So let's start with that, and then we'll move to intersectionality and multi-marginalized, because again, we have a full conversation around the differences in the words themselves. So let's start with disability rights and disability justice.
So obviously you could go and you could like look up the definition of the two. But when I go into a space where I have to explain to individuals who are not really familiar with the disabled community, the difference between the two, my analogy is disability rights means I have access to a building. I have access to get in the building. Disability justice is once I'm in the building, once I'm in that space, I have equity as a person. So right is just making sure I can get into the space, but justice means I have the same equity as non-disabled individuals.
And let me follow up and talk about how the disability justice movement, the importance of having people who are part of the disability community who have lived experience of being a part of the disability community, that they are leading this movement. Talk a little bit about why it's so important that the leaders of this movement are, in fact, people with lived experience.
Well, I mean, how can I give an opinion on something I've never experienced? Like, at least give an informed opinion. Like, sure, I could have an opinion, but I told this story when we talked the last time, and every time I give an interview, I tell the story about the inaccessible bathroom at my local grocery store. And I came out of that inaccessible bathroom and I said, I'm tired of non-disabled people deciding what is accessible for me and for others. Like a person who is not a wheelchair user, how can they understand that every wheelchair is a different size? That my wheelchair may not fit in the accessible stall, but a push wheelchair might. But we both need that stall. So it's important that those who have that lived experience, who know what it's like to be in that space, who know what it's like to face discrimination, to face prejudice, do not have access, do not have equity, to explain to those other individuals who do have access, who do have equity, why that's important. Like, for non-disabled people, I think sometimes it's difficult for them to understand that me just being able to get in a building is not enough.
That's right. And so to further even the conversation about having the conversations and getting the input, we hear a lot about intersectionality. Multi-marginalized is another way that we are incorporating talking about equity. Can we talk a little bit about how intersectionality and multi-marginalized, while again are in the same area of work, they have some finite differences? Let's just talk a little bit about that as well.
So, one thing I have been saying about disability and intersectionality is that disability intersects at every identity. And until society meets us at those intersections, we will not achieve collective liberation. Disabled individuals have to be seen as whole beings. And that's why the topic of intersectionality is so important. And then when we talk about being multi-marginalized, there are multiple ways that a person can be multi-marginalized. If you identify as a woman and you are a disabled white woman, you are multi-marginalized, but you are not multi-marginalized in the same way as a black or brown disabled woman. And I would like to just say, myself as a brown disabled woman, I still have privilege over a black disabled woman. Just like a white disabled woman has privilege over myself, I also have privilege and I have to recognize her privilege. So yes, you can be white, disabled, a woman, or you can be white, queer, and disabled, and you're multi-marginalized, but you're not multi-marginalized in the same way as a black, disabled, queer individual. So there are nuances to identity and how we claim identities.
I really appreciate you talking all the way through that with us. There's often a broad stroke, a broad brush when we talk about a lot of advocacy and movements. And I suppose I should say not when we talk about it, but as it is brought out into the world, where through media and even how legislation is passed, it's often with a very broad stroke, and the nuances within each community really need to start being looked at and addressed in a different way. And so when we're talking about advocacy and self-advocacy, as well as how are we doing this now through our media, I feel like when we look back over the last, I would even say 5 years, how things have changed with technology, how it is that we're able to message and get information out. There's a lot of information that I think the general population now has access to that didn't before. And I do think that it's helping. It's helping raise awareness. And with everything, there is another side of this. So let's talk about a topic that is pretty close to you. You've had some personal experience with online harassment. And let's talk about how it's changed the way that you are working right now. We talked about your bio in the beginning. You are not someone who is who's comfortable with not doing work. You enjoy being busy, and the work that you do is propelling you every day. So let's talk about your experience and in general, how is this affecting how messaging is being related through the media now?
I've always been okay with not being palatable. And that's fine. I always say I'm not palatable, disability not palatable, and that's okay. And when I started the upgrade accessibility movement online, from day one, I've always had opposition to what I've said. And after 5 years of receiving, you know, harassment through DMs and just people misunderstand and say, well, you just can't take criticism. That's not true. There is criticism and then there is outright harassment, outright bullying. And after 5 years of harassment and bullying that came to a head after I posted something that many people misunderstood, I have decided to walk away for the time being and maybe permanent from posting on the Upgrade Accessibility social media account because at this point, no matter what I say, there's going to be someone who is going to accuse me of doing something that I'm not doing, and the best interest of the disabled community has always been my goal, and I've always been accused of the exact opposite. So, for my mental health, for my well-being, I have stepped away. It hurts to step away because it took 5 years to build what I had. And to think that one post that was misconstrued by a number of people just kind of pulled the rug out from under me. It was hard, and it's still hard. It's hard because I'm not done advocating, right? And I'm like, well, how can I do this in a different way now? And I'm struggling to figure out how to do that.
I think that's a great point. There are other ways, right? And when we think of pre-social media, I am someone who was a pre-social media person, who is still reading a physical newspaper. Um, there, everything has evolved, right? There are technology is evolving, communication is evolving. How are we participating in advocacy and doing that in a way that is not just getting the message out, but is also creating personal boundaries, boundaries within a system that on social media, there are no checks and balances. And we have seen that online bullying, it's not just toxic, it is taking some real, there are some real palatable issues, I shouldn't even say issues, um, results of online harassment that are ongoing. And we see this in younger communities, in high schools, in middle schools. We see this with in small towns and small areas. This isn't something that is happening on a global level only with celebrities, right? There's almost I don't want to say like there's an expectation, but really this is an issue when we talk about online harassment and toxicity that is really affecting our culture as a whole. And so removing yourself specifically in this, and also for other people in the audience who think, I need to take a step back because it is best for me, I do think that that in and of itself will create a movement and a hopeful change in behavior. And I look forward to the ways that you are going to continue to pivot and to continue to get your word out because the information advocacy that you're doing is necessary. It's not just necessary, I think it's crucial to hear your voice and to give voice to the disability community in the specific way that you are. So I am definitely looking forward to that. And when we talk about celebrity, right? And now we see this in the social media area as influencers. And that's another catchword, right? It's another keyword that we're seeing everywhere. And influencers are everywhere. and in every industry, in every space, both digitally and physical spaces. I think that there's a lot of confusion between who is an influencer and who's an advocate. Let's talk about this and give us your insight on the difference and how these two types of, I don't even want to say influence, these two types of information really they're at odds with each other.
So I guess I'll probably get criticized for what I say here, and then that's fine because I'm used to it. But and, and I want to say there's nothing wrong with being an influencer. If that's what you want to do, great. Like I'm not of that age to be one. Um, I don't have that influencer aesthetic. I wish I did, but I don't. But like influencers are like the ones who are promoting a service or promoting a product, or they build a brand around who they are, and that's their goal is to promote certain things. An advocate, I want to specifically say a disability rights advocate is advocating for the entire community. The influencer uses I, the advocate uses we.
That is a great way to break that down. And when we're talking about influencers and really, curating a personal brand, and really, there's nothing wrong with that. That if that is what you're doing, that is great. I do think that absolutely, I love the distinction. Influencer is using I, and advocate is it's using we. And when we look at the digital space and we look at how advocacy is moving through the digital space, I do believe that that is a way to really separate the two types of messaging. And so when thinking about advocates, and it's so amazing that every year we see new and different advocates coming on the scene in a different way and bringing a lot of the same messages around equity and intersectionality and inclusion. Let's talk about advice that you would give advocates that are thinking, okay, well, I want to be an activist and I'm not sure really what methodology I want to use. Do I want to go into the digital space? Do I want to be someone that is on the ground, working in communities one-on-one? Talk a little bit about your experience and your journey as an advocate, moving from space to space.
So I hope you don't mind if I pivot the question a tiny bit, because I think there's something important that needs to be said. I am 46 years old. I am in that forgotten demographic in the disabled community. I was almost 13 when the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law. I remember the before and the after of the ADA. A lot of the activists that we're seeing now were born the year the ADA was signed or after. So all they know is the space after the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is nothing wrong with that. But those of us who are not the age of the older advocates, we're not in our 60s or 70s, we're in our mid 40s, are being forgotten about. Because what's the focus now are their young voices, which again, that is fine. But there are those of us who would love to mentor, who say, hey, don't forget about us, who are still advocating, who do TikTok, who do Instagram, who do Twitter, which is now X. We are in those social media spaces just like the younger generation, and there are some in their 30s who say, well, I don't do TikTok because I'm too old. Well, I'm 46 and I do TikTok, so you're not too old to occupy a digital space. But for those who are wanting to advocate, you can occupy in-person spaces and digital spaces. The digital spaces should not and cannot be forgotten because most of the disabled community relies on social media. We rely on digital spaces, so it's important that advocates who are holding in-person events consider having an online component so that everyone can be included. Your work, in order for your advocacy to be inclusive, that online component must be there.
Those are really great points, and I love you bringing up mentoring. And that's, of course, I'm thinking, well, of course, that's where Mary is going to pivot to. She's going to be mentoring and really passing on this knowledge, and it's lived experience knowledge. As you said, having the experience of pre-ADA and post-ADA is a demographic. You are part of a demographic that really thinking about the information coming from both sides of that is crucial for new advocates coming on to really hear about what has changed and what still needs to change. I love your inclusion of creating online space with in-person events. We saw with the shutdown that online events were more accessed and more attended than other in-person events across the board. So it's something to say, okay, well, we're addressing whether or not someone can actually attend this given the space that it's in, or even if they're comfortable. People may not even be comfortable going out, as we saw in the shutdown. So thank you so much for bringing both of those things up. And I know that there are some projects that are coming up. I want to move to those. But also, I wanted to just check in and see, are there other projects that you are working on? I know of one that I can't wait to talk about, but are there other projects or future developments that are coming up for you that you would like to share with us today?
Well, for right now, I am working on a short bio documentary, and it's called Becoming Mary, the journey from adoptee to advocate. And for years, people are like, you need to write your autobiography, you need to tell your story. And I love film, I love TV. This is what I've always wanted to do from a young age. So I was like, why not do it in a different format? And then maybe it will open the door to being able to write my autobiography. I would love to do that. But this is like the first step toward that ultimate goal. And then my first children's book, Adventures Online, got pushed back a tiny bit, but it will be out in September, and I'm excited. And there might be a series of books. Um, I can't really say one way or the other right now, but the idea is that Miss Adeline will have her own series of books coming out, but that is a wait and see. I'm not really supposed to say one way or the other, but if this book does well, that's definitely an option.
Well, I can't wait to see the publication of the book, and we will put all of the information for our audience in the notes of the podcast and how to contact you, the work that you're doing, the book that will be published, and really other ways to get in touch with you for people who would love to be mentored by you. So, Mary, it is always wonderful to speak with you. And I love your insight on so much. And I just really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. And really, you're still advocating through our conversations and your advocacy, although you've taken a minute here to decide what you want to do. You're still giving us all the information, and we appreciate it so much.
I appreciate you having me. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Well, I can't wait to speak with you again. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Empire State of Rights has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. The video for this episode is available on our YouTube channel with closed captioning and ASL interpretation. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org or comment below. For more Empire State of Rights, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.